One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. That's the first book I ever remember from it being a child. That sort of weird Dr. Seuss book about fish and counting and rhyming and all that kind of weird stuff. It's kind of weird. I remember it appealing to my brain, my bentness of my small kiddie brain, in the sense that it wasn't one of those usual stories that, you read about teddy bears going missing or little kids going missing in the forest. It was really weird stuff. It made you think that his name's Dr. Theodore Seuss Geisel or Geisel, I'm not quite sure, but it's an unfortunate last name. You'd want to have a sense of humour with a last name like that. But you think the man must have had an awful lot of LSD around the house to be writing something like over 46 children's books, from, Fox in Socks to Horton Hears a Who to God knows what else. Now, funnily enough, today, which happens to be March the 2nd, I'm sitting there thinking, I actually love Dr. Seuss books. I've been reading them, to my kids for the last 16 years, and I read them when I was a kid and had them read to me, and I know nothing about him. I just assumed he was even a doctor. I thought, well, he must be some sort of weird medical doctor that you go to, Dr. Seuss, with this big, I think it's a sneed on his head. Actually, half of Mullum, I don't know if you've noticed, half of Mullum wears sneeds. Or are they snoods? I'm not sure, but there's the weird hat. I think it's the sneed, actually. You get a lot of them up at Kowana Hall at one of those full moon parties. But I realised I didn't know anything about him, and funnily enough, today, March the 2nd, happens to be his birthday, which I thought was sort of like some sort of cosmic sort of thing that, it could actually even be, sort of the same day. So I wrote a little rhyme myself. I sort of said that cosmic coincidence of not so grand proportions inspired me to research the doctor's contortions. Like, was he? And who was he, and where did he come from? Did he run a private practice in the removal of bums? These things made for sitting, for mess and for shitting would best be removed and replaced with knitting. Um, Perhaps he lives on. I thought, imagine actually, popping down to your local doctor's surgery and saying, Doctor, this is your Dr. Seuss, seeing your Dr. Seuss on Medicare. I think I have a pain in my sacs. And he'd flip open his bag and he'd pull out a sax. And he'd say, because he'd know what to do. If surreal pain continues, do see your doctor. A little bit of rhyming verse would certainly liven up a pap smear, I reckon. Don't you reckon? Can you imagine? This thing is a duck. See its quack with its beak? Now open your legs and let's take a peek. I don't know. I'm sort of impressed with sort of most of the stuff in these books. And I assumed he was a doctor, but it turns out he wasn't a doctor at all. He wasn't a medical doctor, of course. And that was sort of obvious. I sort of assumed. I thought maybe he was a child specialist, but no, he wasn't. And then I thought he must be some sort of doctor of philosophy, some sort of bizarre thesis that he probably wrote in, I don't know, in sort of weird bendy hats or something. But it turns out he wasn't. He enrolled in university, but he never actually did that. He never did it. So, but he called himself a doctor anyway. I think I might do the same. But I have to say, he did do some pretty amazing stuff. I've always loved the illustrations. I think they're amazing. In fact, I do think, as I said before, he's a bit of a time traveller, because I think I actually saw Thing 1 and Thing 2 coming out of the Mullumbimby post office just the other day, because we do have a few people around here looking a little bit like people, sort of, a lot like people out of Mullumbimby. But, I think it is quite amazing, and the verse is incredible in here, the rhyming verse using all sorts of things I never knew about. He goes from using things like iambic, I can't actually say that, like teratamatus or something like that. I don't know. It's some weird rhyming verse. He uses all sorts of rhyming verses for children. Isn't that cute? But in this, it even has my favourite. This is my favourite one in this book. This is called Oh, the Places You'll Go. And this is sort of something, he wrote this one in the 90s, which is, he was at writing, I think, for a very long time. It was actually, I think it sort of reflects, it was sometime after his wife committed suicide, actually, after she found out he'd had an affair with this other woman who he then married about 6 months after his other wife suicided. So I think he knows a little bit about the sadness and the strangeness of the human condition. And so this is what he wrote about. Now this, I think, is amazing. If you've ever wanted a book about depression and alienation and anxiety for 3-year-olds, this is the one. And it says, I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch and your gang will fly on, you'll be left in a lurch. You'll come down from the lurch with an unpleasant bump, and the chances are then you'll be in a slump. And when you're in a slump, you're not much fun. Unslumping yourself is not easily done. And then it goes off into this wonderful depiction of misery and the slide down into desperation, and when things don't change and you can't make it change, but you've just got to hang in there. I don't know any other books that are this realistic that you can read to your toddler. It is my favourite. I do suggest, it's got nothing on it. I do suggest you get that. Interestingly, Johnny Depp has actually signed up, I believe, to actually play Dr. Seuss, or they're not really a Dr. Seuss, sort of soon in any upcoming sort of biopic. I think it's quite interesting, actually. I always thought that Johnny Depp would look good nude in a Sneed. Anyway, that's enough for me. I'll be signing off now. I'm going to change my name to name. No, not Nam. I'll change my name because I can. My name, I call it now Dr. Mandy. Half woman, half cow. Bye. Read some to yourself as an adult. It's really nice. I love it. So weird.